The cerulean light of the teleportation chamber faded, leaving Dr. Marcus Jensen blinking rapidly as his eyes adjusted. Before him stood three tall, willowy figures with iridescent skin that shimmered with subtle patterns of light, the first official Astrian delegation to Earth. "Welcome to the International Space Cooperation Center," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady despite his racing heart. As the lead xenobiologist for First Contact protocols, he'd spent years preparing for this moment. "I'm Dr. Marcus Jensen. I'll be your primary liaison during your stay." The tallest of the three stepped forward. Unlike her companions, whose skin pulsed with cool blues and greens, hers shifted through warmer hues, amber, rose, and gold. "I am Elodie, cultural ambassador of Asria," she said, her voice melodic with an unusual cadence that made Marcus think of wind chimes. "These are my security advisors, Tal and Mira." The universal translator rendered her words perfectly, but Marcus detected nuances in her original speech, patterns of light rippling across her skin that seemed to complement her words. "It's an honor to meet you all," Marcus replied, gesturing toward the exit. "If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your quarters." As they walked through the facility, he couldn't help noticing how other humans stopped and stared, some with wonder, others with poorly disguised fear or disdain. Elodie seemed to notice too, the patterns on her skin darkened slightly. "Your people seem concerned by our presence," she observed quietly. "Change is difficult for humans," Marcus admitted. "We've only known about your civilization for 3 years. Many people are still adjusting to the idea that we're not alone in the universe." Elodie nodded, her amber eyes studying him with unexpected warmth. "On Astria, we have a saying, new stars bring new light. Change brings growth." Over the next few weeks, Marcus spent most of his days with Elodie, helping her navigate Earth's complex social structures and explaining human customs. In turn, she shared insights about Astrian culture, their harmonious relationship with technology, their collective governance system, their belief in emotional transparency. "That's why your skin changes color with your emotions?" Marcus asked one evening as they sat in the botanical garden that had been cultivated to include some Astrian plants. Elodie's skin flickered with amusement, a pattern of dancing gold lights. "It's not entirely involuntary. We can control it somewhat, but it's considered dishonest to completely mask one's emotional state." "That explains why you're terrible at poker," Marcus teased, referring to their disastrous game night with some of the center's staff. Her laughter came as a cascade of chiming notes, her skin pulsing with bright yellow light. "And you humans pride yourselves on hiding your feelings. No wonder there are so many misunderstandings among your kind." Marcus found himself smiling more in Elodie's presence than he had in years. Since losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, he'd buried himself in work, focusing exclusively on preparing for First Contact. Now that it had happened, he was surprised to find himself looking forward to their daily meetings for reasons beyond professional curiosity. One night, after a particularly long day of diplomatic meetings, they found themselves alone in his laboratory. Elodie was fascinated by human biological research, and Marcus had offered to show her some of his work. "Your understanding of genetic adaptation is remarkable," she said, leaning closer to examine a holographic display of DNA sequences. Her proximity sent an unexpected wave of warmth through him. "We're still beginners compared to your people," he replied, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Elodie turned to face him, her skin shifting to that deep purple he'd seen only once before. "There are many ways in which humans exceed us, Marcus," she said softly. "Your capacity for emotional depth is fascinating." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Elodie reached out, her slender fingers tracing the line of his jaw with gentle curiosity. The touch sent electric pulses through his skin. "I should not be doing this," she whispered, but didn't withdraw her hand. Marcus knew he should step back, maintain professional boundaries, but instead found himself covering her hand with his own. "Neither should I." Her skin pulsed with waves of crimson and violet as he leaned in, pressing his lips gently against hers. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as she responded with surprising intensity. Her skin illuminated the darkened lab with swirling patterns of light that matched the racing of his heart. When they finally separated, both breathing heavily, Elodie's eyes were wide with wonder. "That was unexpected," she murmured, her voice vibrating with new harmonics. "Tomorrow is the diplomatic reception," he said, still holding her close. "Are you prepared to meet our world leaders?" Elodie's skin dimmed slightly. "They will reject me, as many of your people do." "Not everyone," Marcus said softly, drawing her back to him. "Not me." She looked at him with those amber eyes, and her skin bloomed with that deep, rich purple that seemed to radiate from within. "No," she agreed quietly, resting her forehead against his. "Not everyone." As they stood entwined in the soft glow of her bioluminescence, Marcus knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges they would face from both their worlds, something profound had just begun. Something that transcended species, planets, and perhaps even reason itself. The grand ballroom of the United Nations headquarters sparkled with crystalline chandeliers and the flash of holographic displays showcasing Earth's achievements. Diplomats from every nation mingled with scientists and military officials, all eager to meet the Astrian delegation. Marcus adjusted his formal suit uncomfortably, scanning the crowd for Elodie. After their kiss in the lab the previous night, they'd parted with lingering gazes but no words. The intensity of his feelings for her troubled him, not just because she was alien, but because he hadn't expected to feel this way about anyone again. When Elodie finally entered, the room fell silent. She wore traditional Astrian formal attire, a flowing garment that seemed woven from light itself, shifting colors complementing the patterns dancing across her skin. She was breathtaking. "Your ambassador is quite exotic," remarked General Hayes, appearing beside Marcus. The way he said exotic made Marcus's jaw tighten. "Ambassador Elodie is one of Astria's most respected diplomats," he replied evenly. Hayes snorted. "Just remember where your loyalties lie, Doctor. We still don't know their true intentions." Before Marcus could respond, Elodie approached them. "Dr. Jensen," she said formally, though her skin flickered with warm golden tones that betrayed her pleasure at seeing him. "General Hayes. I trust the evening finds you well." Hayes gave a curt nod. "Ambassador. Quite an impressive display you're putting on." Confusion crossed her features. "Display? Your light show," Hayes gestured dismissively at her bioluminescent skin. "Very theatrical." Elodie's skin dimmed noticeably. "This is not theater, General. It is communication." "If you'll excuse us," Marcus interjected, guiding Elodie away. "I need to introduce the ambassador to the Secretary General." As they walked, Elodie spoke quietly. "Your military leader dislikes me." "Hayes is suspicious of everyone," Marcus assured her. "It's his job." "And what of last night?" she asked suddenly, her voice low. "Is that part of your job as well?" The directness took him by surprise. "No," he answered honestly. "That was personal." Her skin pulsed with deep violet briefly before she controlled it. "I received a communication from my government this morning. They're concerned about my closeness to you." "Are we being that obvious?" he asked, surprised. "To my people, yes." She gestured to her skin. "Every emotion is visible to those who know how to read the patterns. My advisors have reported back." Before they could continue, they were surrounded by diplomats eager to meet Elodie. For the next hour, Marcus watched as she gracefully fielded questions, many of which bordered on offensive in their presumption. Yet she handled each with dignity, even as her skin occasionally betrayed her discomfort. Later that night, they escaped to the building's rooftop garden. New York's skyline stretched before them, a galaxy of human-made stars. Your leaders asked many questions about Astrian reproduction, Elodie observed, her tone neutral but her skin showing embarrassment with pink ripples. Marcus winced. I apologize for their lack of tact. They fear what they don't understand, she said. As do mine. She stepped closer, her hand finding his in the darkness. Where their skin touched, hers glowed more intensely. My advisors have formally requested that I maintain professional distance from you, she admitted. They fear I'm becoming too emotionally involved with a human. And are you? He asked, his heart racing. In answer, Elodie leaned forward and initiated a kiss herself, more confident than their first. Her skin blazed with patterns Marcus had never seen before, intricate swirls of crimson and gold that radiated heat. He pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, which felt like silk but responded to his touch by coiling gently around his fingers. I shouldn't want this, she whispered against his lips. My body wasn't designed for yours. Do you want to stop? He asked, prepared to step back. No, she replied, her skin pulsing with desire. I want to learn. His hands explored the contours of her body through the light fabric of her garment, discovering that while her form was humanoid, subtle differences made each touch a new discovery. Where his fingers traced her spine, lines of light followed in their wake. When he caressed the sensitive spot at the nape of her neck, her whole body illuminated with pleasure. Elodie's exploratory touches were equally curious. Your heart rate increases when I touch you here, she observed, her fingers brushing across his chest. And your pupils dilate when I do this. She pressed her body against his, the sensation of her warmth making him groan softly. We're compatible in more ways than our scientists predicted, she murmured, her voice taking on new harmonics that seemed to vibrate through him. Their intimate exploration was interrupted by the sound of the rooftop door opening. They separated quickly as Tal, one of Elodie's advisors, emerged. Ambassador, Tal said coldly, his skin pulsing with disapproving blues. You're needed for the closing ceremony. Elodie's skin shifted to formal patterns, though a trace of violet remained. Of course. I'll be right there. Tal's gaze moved between them, clearly reading the intimate patterns still fading from Elodie's skin. Without a word, he turned and left. He'll report this, Elodie said quietly. Will you get in trouble? Marcus asked, concerned. She looked up at the stars, visible despite the city lights. Somewhere up there, my homeworld is reconsidering the wisdom of this diplomatic mission. And somewhere down here, she placed her hand over his heart, I'm reconsidering everything I thought I knew about humans. Is it worth it? He asked, covering her hand with his own. Her skin answered before her words did, blooming with that deep, steady purple that he was beginning to recognize as something profound. Some stars are worth falling for, she whispered, even if you burn in the process. The Astrian Council has concerns about your relationship with the human scientist, High Counselor Varen's holographic form stated without preamble. His skin pulsed with formal indigo patterns, the Astrian equivalent of diplomatic severity. Elodie stood alone in her quarters, facing the projection of her superior. 3 weeks had passed since the diplomatic reception, and in that time, her relationship with Marcus had deepened considerably. My personal connections do not interfere with my duties, she replied, carefully controlling her skin's illumination to project professional composure. Your skin patterns in recent transmissions suggest otherwise, Varen countered. Emotional entanglement with aliens was not part of your mission parameters. Elodie felt a flash of defiance, which she couldn't entirely suppress from her bioluminescence. Understanding humans requires more than observation. Immersion in their culture has provided valuable insights. Immersion is a diplomatic way of describing what your advisors have reported, Varen said coldly. The Council is considering your immediate recall. After the transmission ended, Elodie sat in darkness, her skin's dim glow reflecting her troubled thoughts. The door chimed, then slid open to reveal Marcus. Bad news, he asked, immediately sensing her distress. She rose and moved into his embrace without hesitation. They know about us. The council is considering my recall. Marcus held her tightly, his warmth comforting against the cool fear spreading through her. We knew this might happen. I've never defied the council before, she whispered. My entire life has been in service to Asria. And now? His question hung in the air between them. In answer, Elodie initiated their most passionate kiss yet. Her skin blazed with crimson desire as she guided his hands to the fastenings of her garment. The light fabric dissolved at his touch, revealing her luminescent body in its entirety for the first time. Marcus drew back slightly, awestruck. Patterns of light pulsed beneath her skin in hypnotic waves that followed the contours of her form. Where humans had defined musculature, she had flowing lines of bioluminescence that intensified with her quickening breath. You're beautiful, he whispered, his voice husky with desire. Self-conscious under his gaze, Elodie dimmed slightly. I'm different from human women. Gloriously so, he assured her, removing his own clothing with trembling fingers. Their exploration of each other grew bolder, more intimate. Elodie discovered that human skin, while lacking bioluminescence, was remarkably sensitive. Marcus's breath caught when she traced the contours of his chest, followed the line of his hip, and ventured lower with curious fingers. For his part, Marcus learned that the brightest points of light on Elodie's body corresponded to her most sensitive areas. When he kissed the luminescent patterns along her collarbone, her entire body pulsed with pleasure. When his fingers found the constellation of lights at the juncture of her thighs, she arched against him with a melodic cry. I've researched human intimacy, she confessed breathlessly. But experiencing it is. Words failed her as his touch grew more insistent. Their bodies entwined on her bed, a dance of light and shadow. Despite their physiological differences, they found rhythm together, each responding to the other's cues with increasing urgency. When they finally joined, Elodie's body illuminated with such intensity that the room was bathed in radiant light. The sensation of completion, of connection beyond the physical, overwhelmed them both. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Marcus tracing patterns on her gradually dimming skin. That was unprecedented, she finished, her voice containing harmonics of satisfaction he hadn't heard before. Astrian scientists theorized that cross-species intimacy was possible, but discouraged its exploration. I can see why, he chuckled softly. If they knew how compatible we are, they'd worry about half the diplomatic corps falling for humans. Her expression grew serious. What happens now? Before he could answer, his communication device chimed urgently. The message was brief but alarming, Jensen. Emergency meeting. Security level Alpha. Report immediately. Something's wrong, he said, hurriedly dressing. When they arrived at the secure conference room, General Hayes and Director Keller from Earth Intelligence were waiting, along with Tal, who avoided looking at Elodie. We've intercepted communications suggesting the Astrian government has been less than forthcoming about their technology, Hayes began without preamble. Specifically, weapons capabilities. Elodie's skin flashed with shock. That's impossible. Astria abandoned weapons development centuries ago. Yet your ships maintain defensive capabilities that could easily be weaponized, Keller countered. And we have evidence of recent tests. This is absurd, Marcus interjected. Ambassador Elodie has been transparent about all aspects of Astrian technology. Hayes fixed him with a hard stare. Has she, Doctor? Or has your judgment been compromised by your personal relationship with the ambassador? The room fell silent. Elodie's skin betrayed her distress with rapid pulses of dark blue. Your involvement with Dr. Jensen has been noted with concern, Tal finally spoke, addressing Elodie. The Council has ordered our immediate return to Astria. All diplomatic discussions are suspended pending review. This is a misunderstanding, Elodie insisted, looking between the humans and her advisor. Let me contact the council directly. That won't be necessary, Hayes said coldly. Your ship will depart within 48 hours. Until then, your movements will be restricted to diplomatic quarters. After the humans left, Tal turned to Elodie, his skin patterns conveying deep disapproval. You've compromised everything, Ambassador. Your infatuation with this human has blinded you to your duty. My feelings for Marcus have nothing to do with this, she argued. These weapons allegations are false. Are they? Tal challenged. Or has your human lover kept secrets from you, just as you've kept the full extent of your relationship from me? Left alone, Marcus and Elodie faced each other in the empty conference room, the weight of their world's mistrust hanging between them. I don't believe these allegations, Marcus said firmly, taking her hands in his. But I can't let you leave, not like this. Elodie's skin pulsed with the deep purple of profound emotion as she rested her forehead against his. 2 days, Marcus. We have 2 days to change the course of 2 worlds. Her voice took on a resonance he'd never heard before, determination mixed with something else, something that made her entire being glow with newfound purpose. And I refuse to believe that what we've found together is meant to end in separation. The Astrian ship rose silently into the night sky, its luminescent hull pulsing with the same patterns Elodie's skin had shown when she'd said goodbye. Marcus watched from the observation deck, his hand pressed against the glass as if he could somehow reach across the growing distance between them. She's gone, he whispered to the empty room. Their final 48 hours together had been a desperate race against time. While publicly maintaining composure during formal farewells, they had worked tirelessly behind the scenes, Elodie contacting sympathetic council members, Marcus gathering evidence that the weapons allegations were based on misinterpreted data. Their efforts had bought them only a small concession: communication would continue between their worlds, albeit restricted to official channels. Their personal relationship, however, had been deemed diplomatically problematic by both governments. Their last night together had been both desperate and tender. Knowing separation was inevitable, they had memorized each other with touch and taste, words and sighs. Elodie's body had illuminated with patterns Marcus now recognized as love, complex spirals of violet and gold that seemed to reach toward him even as they faded. I'll find a way back to you, she had promised, her voice resonating with harmonics that vibrated through his very bones. This isn't the end. Now, as the Astrian ship became just another point of light in the night sky, Marcus clung to that promise. 3 months passed. Marcus threw himself into his work, analyzing the data they'd gathered during the Astrian visit and advocating for renewed diplomatic relations. His colleagues noticed the change in him, the intensity that replaced his former methodical approach, the late nights spent drafting proposals and reviewing transmission logs. You need to let her go, Dr. Eliza Park told him one evening, finding him alone in the lab. The diplomatic mission failed. We're back to square one. It didn't fail, Marcus insisted. We made first contact. We established communication. That's not failure. And you fell in love with an alien, Park said gently. Which is probably why you can't see this objectively anymore. He looked up from his work, eyes tired but determined. Would you consider it objective to dismiss an entire species based on a misunderstanding? To abandon the most significant connection humanity has made with another civilization? That's not what Eliza, I know what Elodie's people have to offer us. And it goes far beyond technology or scientific knowledge. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. They understand something we've forgotten, that connection, real connection between beings, matters more than power or politics. The secure communication terminal in his lab activated with a soft chime. Marcus rushed to it, recognizing the signature of an incoming Astrian transmission, the first in weeks. Elodie's holographic image appeared, though the quality was poor, with frequent disruptions in the signal. Her skin showed formal diplomatic patterns, but beneath them, Marcus could see flashes of the deep purple that was for him alone. "Dr. Jensen," she began formally, aware they were being monitored. "The Council has reviewed your latest transmission regarding the weapons misunderstanding. I've been authorized to inform you that we accept your explanation and evidence." Relief flooded through him. "That's excellent news, Ambassador. Does this mean diplomatic relations will resume?" "Limited discussions may proceed," she said carefully. "I will be serving as liaison from Asria, though physical travel between our worlds remains restricted." Something in her tone made him look more closely at her holographic form. Behind the diplomatic facade, her skin showed patterns of excitement he recognized from their intimate moments. "Is there anything else you're authorized to share, Ambassador?" he asked, choosing his words carefully. The hologram flickered, and for a moment her formal demeanor slipped. "Marcus," she whispered, her skin pulsing with longing. "I've discovered something." The transmission abruptly cut off, leaving him staring at empty space. For the next month, no further communications came from Asria. Marcus's inquiries were met with diplomatic deflections. Something had changed, but no one would tell him what. Then, late one night as he slept fitfully in his quarters, his personal communication device activated with a tone he didn't recognize. The holographic display showed not Elodie, but Tal, her former advisor. "Dr. Jensen," Tal said without greeting, his skin patterns conveying urgent concern. "This transmission is unauthorized. I risk much by contacting you." Marcus sat up, instantly alert. "What's happened? Where's Elodie?" "The ambassador has been placed under restriction," Tal said, his voice low. "Her discovery has alarmed the council." "What discovery?" Tal's skin flickered with hesitation. "She found evidence in our ancient records of previous contact between our worlds, thousands of years ago. Contact that ended in genetic compatibility." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You mean Astrians and humans share ancestral connections," Tal confirmed. "Which explains the physiological compatibility you and the ambassador experienced." Marcus felt his heart racing. Why would this discovery lead to her restriction? "Because it undermines millennia of Astrian belief in our unique evolutionary path," Tal explained. "And because she has shown physical changes since returning." "Changes? Is she ill?" Tal's skin patterns shifted to something like embarrassment mixed with awe. "She carries life, Dr. Jensen. Life that should be impossible." The room seemed to spin around Marcus. "She's pregnant?" "With a hybrid child," Tal confirmed. "The first in recorded history. The council fears what this means. Some wish to terminate the pregnancy for study. Others see it as an abomination." "And Elodie?" "She fights for the child's right to exist," Tal said, his skin showing reluctant admiration. "She says it represents the future of both our worlds. But she cannot fight alone much longer." Marcus stood, determination straightening his spine. "Tell her I'm coming." "Impossible," Tal objected. "No human has ever been permitted on Asria." "Then I'll be the first," Marcus said firmly. "Because I won't be separated from the woman I love when she needs me most. Not by politics, not by distance, and certainly not by fear of what our love has created." As if in response to his declaration, the tablet on his desk activated, displaying a classified message from General Hayes, Jensen. "Diplomatic opportunity. Possible human delegation to Asria. Briefing 0800 tomorrow." Marcus looked back at Tal's hologram with renewed hope. "Tell Elodie to hold on. Tell her." His voice broke slightly. "Tell her our stars are about to align." The Astrian atmosphere painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold as the human diplomatic vessel descended. Marcus stood at the viewport, heart pounding as the alien landscape came into view. Floating crystal cities interconnected by bridges of light, vast gardens arranged in mathematical patterns, and in the distance, mountains that seemed to pulse with the same bioluminescence as Elodie's skin. "Remember, Doctor," General Hayes said beside him, "you're here as Earth's xenobiology expert, not as a man looking for his alien lover." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The 6-week journey had been the longest of his life, each day taking him closer to Elodie yet stretching his patience to breaking point. According to Tal's last secretive communication, Elodie's pregnancy had progressed rapidly, another surprise in a situation already unprecedented. The diplomatic party disembarked into an enormous crystalline chamber filled with light and music that seemed to emanate from the structure itself. A delegation of Astrian officials waited, their formal attire and skin patterns projecting diplomatic welcome. Marcus scanned their faces anxiously, but Elodie was not among them. High Counselor Varen stepped forward. "Welcome to Astria, representatives of Earth. Your presence here is historic." The formal greetings seemed to last an eternity. Finally, Varen turned to Marcus. "Dr. Jensen, I understand you have specific interest in our biological sciences." "Yes, Counselor," Marcus replied carefully. "I'm particularly interested in recent discoveries regarding our species' compatibility." A ripple of discomfort passed through the Astrian delegation, visible in brief flickers across their skin. "Perhaps you would like to visit our biological research center," Varen suggested, his tone neutral but his skin betraying tension. "A guide has been arranged." Marcus followed an Astrian attendant through corridors of living crystal that hummed with energy. They passed chambers where scientists worked with equipment both recognizable and utterly alien. Finally, they stopped before a door that pulsed with a familiar pattern, deep purple spirals that Marcus would know anywhere. "She awaits you," the attendant said simply, then departed. The door dissolved at his approach. Inside, a spacious chamber opened onto a garden terrace where a single figure stood with her back to him, gazing out at the alien landscape. Even from behind, Marcus would know her anywhere, the graceful sweep of her neck, the subtle glow of her skin visible even through her robes. "Elodie," he whispered. She turned slowly, and Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Her body had changed, her slender form now curved around the unmistakable swell of advanced pregnancy. But it was her face that transfixed him, her features more luminous than he remembered, her eyes holding a depth of emotion that made her entire being glow. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with a soft cry that contained harmonics of joy, relief, and longing, Elodie rushed to him. Their bodies met, arms encircling each other, lips finding each other with desperate hunger. Her skin blazed with patterns he recognized as love, desire, and something new, a protective fierceness centered around her swollen belly. When they finally drew apart enough to look into each other's eyes, both were weeping, his tears salt water, hers luminescent droplets that glowed against her skin. "They told me you couldn't come," she said, her voice containing melodies he had dreamed of during their separation. "That humans would never be permitted on Astria." "Nothing could have kept me away," he replied, his hands cradling her face. "Not once I knew about." His gaze dropped to her abdomen. Elodie took his hand and placed it against the curve of her belly. Immediately, he felt movement beneath his palm, and simultaneously, a pattern of light pulsed outward from his touch, as if the child within recognized its father's presence. "She knows you," Elodie whispered in wonder. "She's been waiting." "She?" Marcus asked, his voice thick with emotion. Elodie nodded, her skin glowing with maternal pride. "A daughter. The first of her kind, neither fully human nor fully Astrian, but something new. Something wonderful." Marcus knelt before her, pressing his lips gently to the swell of her belly. "Hello, little star," he murmured. In response, a distinct pattern of light bloomed beneath Elodie's skin, a child's first greeting to her father. Rising, he took Elodie in his arms again. I'm never leaving you again, he promised. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, my place is with you and our daughter. Elodie's expression grew serious. The council is divided about us, about her. Some see our child as an abomination, others as a miracle that proves our species are kindred. The debate continues daily. And what do you think? He asked, tucking a strand of her luminescent hair behind her ear. Her skin pulsed with certainty. I think she is the future, Marcus. Proof that love can transcend even the space between stars. She placed his hand over her heart, where he could feel its strong, steady beat. My body changed to accommodate her, adapted in ways our scientists thought impossible. And in doing so, proved that our differences were never obstacles, merely variations on the same cosmic theme. Their lips met again, the kiss deepening with months of separation and longing. His hands caressed the new curves of her body, eliciting patterns of light that danced beneath her skin and reflected his touch. When her fingers slipped beneath his shirt to trace the contours of his chest, he groaned with desire long denied. I've missed you, she whispered against his neck. Every part of you. They moved to the sleeping platform in the adjoining chamber, where Elodie slowly removed her robes. Her pregnant body glowed with enhanced bioluminescence, the patterns more complex and beautiful than he remembered. You're even more exquisite, he told her, his voice husky with desire as he removed his own clothing. Their lovemaking was different now, more tender, mindful of her condition, yet no less passionate. Marcus discovered new sensitivities in her changing body, places where his gentle touch made her entire being pulse with pleasure. For her part, Elodie seemed to sense his needs with heightened awareness, her fingers and lips finding exactly where he most wanted them. When they finally lay entwined in the aftermath, her skin continuing to glow with satisfaction, Marcus felt a sense of rightness, of completion, that transcended physical pleasure. The council has summoned us both tomorrow, Elodie said softly, tracing patterns on his chest. They will announce their decision about our future. And if they decide against us? He asked, his arm tightening protectively around her. She raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes, her own gleaming with determination. Then we leave, together. The human delegation has a ship. There are other worlds, neutral territories where we could raise our daughter in peace. The thought of exile from both their homeworlds hung heavy between them. Yet looking at Elodie, radiant with love and life, Marcus knew he would choose her and their child over everything else. Whatever happens, he promised, we face it together. The council chamber was imposing, a vast space with crystalline walls that amplified sound and light. The full Astrian council sat in a semicircle, their formal attire and controlled skin patterns emphasizing the solemnity of the occasion. Opposite them sat the human delegation, looking small and dark against the luminescent architecture. Marcus and Elodie stood in the center, hands clasped between them, as High Counselor Varen addressed the assembly. We have deliberated on the unprecedented situation before us, Varen began, his voice resonating through the chamber. The union between Ambassador Elodie and Dr. Jensen, and the child that has resulted, represents both challenge and opportunity for our peoples. Marcus felt Elodie's hand tighten in his as Varen continued. Ancient texts confirm what the ambassador discovered, that Astrians and humans share ancestral connections, separated by millennia of divergent evolution. This child, he gestured to Elodie's abdomen, carries the genetic heritage of both our worlds. Her existence proves what some have long suspected, we are not as different as we believed. A murmur passed through both delegations. Therefore, Varen announced, the council has reached a decision. We will establish a permanent embassy on Earth, with Ambassador Elodie continuing her role as our representative, alongside her human partner and their child, who will serve as living embodiments of our shared future. Relief and joy surged through Marcus. He turned to Elodie, whose skin was blazing with happiness, the patterns so bright they seemed to fill the chamber with light. Furthermore, Varen continued, Dr. Jensen will be granted full citizenship of Astria, the first human to receive this honor, recognizing his contribution to interspecies understanding. General Hayes stepped forward from the human delegation. Earth reciprocates this gesture. We offer Ambassador Elodie full Earth citizenship and recognize the validity of their union under human law. As formal applause filled the chamber, Marcus pulled Elodie into his arms, heedless of protocol. Her lips found his in a kiss that spoke of journeys ended and beginnings yet to come. Later, as they stood on the terrace of what would now be their home on Astria, watching twin moons rise over the luminescent landscape, Elodie guided his hand once more to their child. She's active tonight, Marcus observed as light pulsed beneath his palm. She senses harmony, Elodie explained, her voice containing the musical harmonics of profound contentment. As do I. The child kicked again, stronger this time, her movement synchronized with bursts of light that seemed to form distinct patterns, neither human nor Astrian, but uniquely her own. What will we name her? Marcus asked softly. Elodie's skin glowed with that now familiar deep purple that had come to mean love in its purest form. In the ancient Astrian tongue, there is a word for the light that connects distant stars, making constellations from separate points of brilliance. And that word is? Lyra, she said, the name itself seeming to shimmer in the air between them. It means, the bridge between worlds. Marcus smiled, drawing her close as their daughter, Lyra, pulsed with light between them. Above, stars gleamed in the alien sky, no longer distant and unreachable, but beacons of a universe now open to them both. Lyra, he repeated, the name feeling right on his tongue. Our own constellation. Elodie's answering smile contained all the light of her world as she leaned in to kiss him once more. The beginning of our own galaxy, she whispered against his lips. Star by star.